Turn the mic on in a minute, though. I know we're gonna do that. If we're not gonna do that, I guess I'm gonna have to do this without a mic. So I'm gonna say one more time with real magic. We're gonna turn the mic on now, huh?
Yes. We're gonna make it a little louder.
I guess we're not turning the mic on. Kim, can you help me out?
Do you have a switch there?
Is there a switch?
Yeah. Should be at the bottom or at the side.
Very bottom.
Lit at the bottom.
Yeah, you see the lights?
Oh, you mean the one that says off and on? I knew you was trying to trick me, bro. I knew you was trying to trick me. Okay, here's the deal. I am the first son of the first son of the first son. When I was born, my great-grandfather said, I waited for you for 90 years. When my great-grandmother took a look at me, she said, you look just like your papa. And from then on, I was known as Lil Papa. And Papa, who had been known for 70 years as Papa, all of a sudden became Big Papa. So you don't have to wonder why they call him Big Papa. But 2 weeks after I was born, my cousin was born. And his mother, during the whole time that she was pregnant, all she wanted to eat was cornbread. She ate cornbread in the morning, she ate it for lunch, she ate it for dinner. She woke up in the middle of the night when she wanted a snack, she had cornbread. So it's pretty apparent when he was born that his nickname was going to be cornbread. See what I'm saying? So about 2 weeks after that, another cousin was unexpectedly born. And he was about 3 months premature, and it was pretty certain that he was not going to live. We really didn't expect that he or his mother were going to survive that pregnancy. And he did. So his nickname became Lucky. So it's Lil Papa, Cornbread, and Lucky. The three Musketeers. You know, and so we grew up together in Virginia in our first couple of years. And as we were growing up, Lucky used to go around and tell everybody that we were triplets. And we were, you know, we looked enough alike, and we were close enough in age that nobody ever challenged that. But Lucky was the comedian. This guy, we knew he was going to be like the next Flip Wilson. You know, I mean, he could tell jokes anywhere. He'd have you cracking up, tears rolling down the side of your face one night. He was the comedian. As we grew older, you know, we got to know each other better. We all, you know, we had a real good thing going on. The three Musketeers, remember that? The three Musketeers. So there we are, like we're 10 years old, and all of a sudden, for some reason, the white folks decided that they wanted to kill Emmett Till. So when they killed Emmett Till, our parents, who lived in Philadelphia, Harlem, and Baltimore, decided that their sons had to come live with them now. So we had to leave the South. They didn't trust us living in the South anymore. So I moved to Harlem. And Lucky, he moved to Philadelphia. Okay, so we would get together in the summer times every now and again. But when we were like teenagers, we got together when Lucky was in high school. And Lucky was like the most popular guy in high school because he had the ability to tell jokes. He won all the contests and talent shows and stuff like that. So whenever we got to Philadelphia, Lucky always had the prettiest girl in high school. The best thing about hanging out with the guy who goes out with the prettiest girl in high school is that the prettiest girls usually hang out together. And that meant that Cornbread and I pretty much had our pick of anybody in Philadelphia that we wanted to go out with. And we were cool, the three Musketeers. You got to hear me. All right, so there we were, and having a great time, living our lives, and all of a sudden the United States of America decided that they wanted to kill Vietnamese people. So we don't know why they wanted to kill Vietnamese people, but we knew they wanted to kill them. So the first thing that they did was they decided that they were going to draft they were going to draft cornbread. And he said, no, I'm not going to the Army, so he joined the Air Force. Lucky he didn't think about it, he just went on, he went to the Army. And I lucked up and I got a scholarship to college, so I went to college. I had student deferment. So, you know, I went on about my business and they went on about their business. We didn't see each other for at least 10 years. We didn't know where we were, you know. And so, you know, I went moved to the Caribbean, and that's where I met the Queen. I always knew that I was going to marry an African queen. I just didn't know where I was going to meet her, you know. And I met my African queen in the Virgin Islands. Not only was she my African queen, she was also the queen of the Carnival. I was like, man, I got it going on. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, she was looking at me and I was looking at her. And the thing is that she was smiling at me, and I walked up to her and I said, excuse me, but if you keep smiling at me like that, I'm gonna have to kiss you. And she smiled even bigger than the smile she was smiling before, so I kissed her. And I told her I believe deep spiritual needs drew us together. I told her that we blend like the fragrance of flowers blossoming in the gardens of the motherland. And like wind swept from the sea, my spirit that sought her out.
All right. Yeah.
She liked it at that.
Yeah.
So we got married. We had kids and stuff like that. And actually, she was from San Francisco. And so she got a scholarship to go to UC Berkeley to become a librarian. Well, I already thought she was the smartest woman in the world. But can you imagine being married to a librarian? I mean, maybe it's not a big deal to you folks now because y'all got Google. But when you had a librarian for your wife, anything you wanted to know, you could just ask her. What's the capital of Yugoslavia? You know, I mean, anything. You know, the smartest woman in the world. So then we came to San Francisco. And that's when I met my father-in-law. Okay, now I didn't know at the time that he was what they call a San Francisco hustler. So he took me to this bar, and it was called the Sugar Hill. And the Sugar Hill was up on Stanton. And the first thing I noticed, well, I mean, in those days, everything was smoky, because everybody was smoking cigarettes. But it was dark, you know, when you walked in, it was a smooth, cool kind of a vibe. You know, everybody in there was cool, and you knew it. You know, and the music was always jazz. On the weekend, they had live jazz, but during the week, nothing but jazz came out of the jukebox. And I went in there and I started meeting people. I didn't know who these cats were. I met this dude who was a lawyer, and he later became the mayor of San Francisco. I met this dude, he was a police officer, Earl Sanders. Next thing I know, 40 years later, he was the chief of police. And I was like, oh, okay, but I mean, we didn't know any of that stuff in those days. You know, Willie Brown was a lawyer, you know, handling hoodlums and criminals. So, you know, out there, but what I remember most was I met the guy who booked all the acts on the weekend, and his name was Kermit. And I called him Kermit D. Frog. You know, and we was funny, we laughed, but the thing that happened was, the first time I met him, it was kind of like I looked into his eyes and he looked into my eyes, and I don't know what was going on, but we had a bromance. I mean, we had this thing going on where we understood each other almost perfectly. By the end of the night, we were finishing each other's sentences. It was like really cool. All right, now, I'd never had a bromance before, so that was my first experience. But it was pretty cool, so we decided we should do stuff together. So we decided, this was about the time when they came out with all this disco stuff. So he said we should rent the biggest nightclub and throw a big disco night. And I said, what? He said, yeah, man, we should go down to Broadway, we should rent the Dance Your Ass Off nightclub, and we should throw the biggest party that anybody ever saw in San Francisco. And I said, yeah, we should go out and throw the biggest disco party anybody ever had in San Francisco at the Dance Your Ass Off nightclub. And I was down with it, you know. So we rented the place and we went down there, and I got there. I was clean as the board of hell. 3 piece back and whatnot. big old afro sitting on my shoulders.
Of course, of course.
I had it going on, you know, and I had the queen with me with that big old afro she had in that long, pretty African dress and whatnot. We had it going on. And then this lady, I guess she looked like she was only about 5 feet taller than me, and she had hair that went all the way down to her ankles. And so I noticed her, and I could see she was noticing me, and then she came over to me and she said, "You dirty, no good son of a bitch! I can't believe I waited for you for 3 hours." Okay, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to explain to my wife that I have no idea what this woman's talking about. I never saw this woman before in my life. And just about then, Kermit D. Frog walked up. And she said, "Oh, you're not Kermit." And she turned around and said, "You dirty, no good son of a bitch." And I looked at my wife and I said, "I can't believe that she thought I was him." My wife said, "Well, you know, you guys do kind of look alike. You guys do kind of dress alike." Okay, cool. So about 2 weeks later, I go to a party at my cousin's house, my cousin Sunshine, and it's like her 30th birthday. It's going to be a big deal because we all turned 30 around the same time. So, you know, I'm going to the party, and of course I'm clean as the board of health. You know, I walked in, I go down to where the party is, and just as I get downstairs where everybody's dancing and partying, because I'm going to show them to do the latest dance steps, when I get down there, the first thing I see is Kermit. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" It is about the same time he says to me, "What are you doing here?" And about the same time I said to him, he said to me, "This is my cousin's house." And right about then, Sunshine came downstairs and she said, "Love, Papa, and cornbread." And I was like, "Get out of here. We've been hanging out for almost a year. Get out." Oh man, she said, "That ain't nothing." Because what's going to happen next in a couple of weeks, Lucky is moving to San Francisco. Get out of here, the 3 Musketeers. You know, so we decided that, you know, since he was coming, we're going to throw a party. So we threw a party at the Anxious Ass. I don't know if any of you people know about the Anxious Ass, but I was there. And so then we are at the Anxious Ass, and, you know, I was clean as a board of health. But that's when Lucky walked in. And Lucky walked in, he had one of them big old hats on, and he had the curls that came all down his shoulders and whatnot. He had the little Lord Jesus goatee thing going on, and his suit was white on white with white and white. You know, I mean, so I think he recognized us before we recognized him. And so he came over to where we were. He kind of slid over to where we were because he was wearing those 4-inch platforms. But he was doing it though, you know. He had the little boogie stuff going, but he had to slide over to where we were. So he sits down. He said, "Man, you are not going to believe what happened to me." And we were like, "We're not going to believe it. Please tell us what happened to you." So he said, "Man, I was driving my taxi cab in Philly, and I was waiting outside this building for this woman, and looked like she was in an argument with this dude, and they was having this big old argument. While they were arguing, I just happened to notice that was the finest woman I had ever seen in my life. I mean, she was absolutely gorgeous, honey-colored, thick. I mean, she was like a cross between Beyonce and Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. And I was like, "Yeah, Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan." And so, you know, she walked away from the dude and she got into his taxi cab. So he gets into the taxi cab, he looks into the rearview mirror, he looks into her eyes, deep, dark pools of loveliness just kind of engulfed and enveloped him, kind of drew him off into a trance. He knew, don't even look in the mirror anymore, just keep on driving. You know, where to, miss? So he starts driving. But he said, you know, the thing that I do is what I do, so I started telling jokes. And I started telling the jokes, and I told the jokes from the time she got in the cab till she got out. When she got out of the cab, she didn't want to leave. And when she did get out of the cab, she gave me a card with a telephone number on it and a $50 bill. And she said, "Call me." Obviously, he called. He called her, and they started dating. She lived in this penthouse building. She was a big time, turns out she was a big time lawyer, graduated from Vanderbilt University in law school and stuff, and so she was like a really big deal. And she had a job with a modeling company. Okay, I mean, obviously she was not a model. Like I said, she was like Shaka Khan. You know what I'm saying? But she was absolutely gorgeously beautiful. When I saw her, I was like, wow. Okay, and we walked in the house, and there she was, looking all gorgeous and beautiful. But the thing that impressed me the most was that my cousin had a walk-in closet. I mean, he had a walk-in closet. He had like 50 suits. He had 100 pair of shoes. Most of them was high heel platform shoes. She could slide around and, you know what I'm saying? But he had it all. He had it going on. The apartment was fabulous. When you got to the door downstairs, you had to know somebody to get in there. And the dude at the door, he was like, "Yes, who would you like to see?" You know, and I was like, "Oh, I can't see my cousin. I can't see Lucky." He said, "Oh, Mr. Johnson." You know, so they let us up in the house and whatnot. And like I said, I met Honey. I couldn't believe how fine she was. I mean, she was like the second finest woman that I ever met in my life. Because the finest woman I ever met in my life was my wife. And not only was my wife the finest woman I ever met in my life, although Honey was real smart and she went to Vanderbilt University Law School, my wife was a librarian. Okay, so my wife was the smartest person that I ever met in my life. And I knew that because she married me. So it wasn't a contest about who the smartest was, you know, between the two of them. So they going out for like, this is like, she told him, she said, "I'm moving to San Francisco. My company is changing locations, and if you move to San Francisco with me, I will get you a baby blue convertible Mercedes-Benz." And he says, "You didn't have to give me the car. I would have came to San Francisco with you, but yeah, I want the Mercedes-Benz." So she bought him the car, and they moved to San Francisco. Everything was cool, but about a year after they was in, she used to take him on all the trips. They went to Peru, they went to Jamaica, they went to Amsterdam, they went to Paris. But after a while, she stopped taking them to all of those trips. She started going on those trips without him. Well, we saw some of the things that happened. He saw some of the stuff that happened on those trips. They were snorting cocaine, they were smoking hashish, and everybody was touching everybody up and whatnot. He didn't like the idea of any of that kind of stuff. So he called us up and he was complaining to the cousins. You know, he was like, "Man, and I know they doing this, and I know they doing that, and I know they doing the other too." And so we said, "Okay, cousins night." So we decided we was gonna meet at the club. We met at the club, came down to the club. How was I supposed to know that it was Bill Withers night? Okay, so we go in, everything was cool at first, you know. Grandma's hands used to clap on Sunday morning. You know what I mean? That's trick. You ain't got no problem with grandma clapping her hands. You know what I'm saying? And then it was lean on me when you're not done. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You know, everybody in the club's gonna lean on me. So, you know, that was cool. Everything was fine until he said, "Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Boom, boom, boom. Only darkness every day. Boom, boom, boom. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Boom, boom, boom. And I know, yeah. Hey, I ought to leave the young thing alone. It ain't no sunshine when she's I said, "Yo, cuz, come on, let's go out in the alley and smoke this joint." So we went out in the alley and we smoked a joint and whatnot, and it was cool. We chatting a little bit and whatnot. We walked back in the club. Bill Withers said, I got a friend who knows your best friend. He goes some places that y'all go. He said he saw y'all at a party, sniffing white powder up your nose. My cousin almost lost it there. He knew they were sniffing them white powders and on the trips and stuff like that. He was just really upset. But I said, waitress, could we get some bourbons over here? Yeah, double. Yeah, right. Okay. So before she could get the bourbons over there, Bill Withers said, a man walking down the street just tried to stare me down. And when I looked at you, baby, you looked at the ground. And I don't know who he is. I think that you do. They're coming. Who is he? And what is he to you? Okay, so now Cuz was already feeling bad. And we in there and we drinking all of this bourbon and stuff like that and smoking weed in the alley. And so now it's time to go home. So we all smart enough that we take taxi cabs home. But when Cuzzo gets home, he gets to the door. He gets to the door of the house, and he realizes that he don't have his keys. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and he don't have his keys, and he got to pee. So he doing the key dance and the pee dance. The key dance and the pee dance. So he gets a little desperate, okay? And all of a sudden he just goes, and honey, I guess she was a little slow in getting up out of bed and stuff. And so, you know, it took her a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes before she got to the door. And just before she opened the door, he said, bam, 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 boom, boom, bam, 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 boom. She opened the door. She opened the door and she tried to put her hands on her hips, but he almost knocked her down trying to get to the bathroom. He gets to the bathroom, you know, and he's in the middle of, oh, what a relief it is. And he realized that she's standing behind him, looking over his shoulder. He said, don't roll your eyes at me, woman. I think it's time you found out who I really am. I'm in a bad mood this evening, and right now I really don't give a good goddamn. Now, seriously, he probably could have gotten away with that, but he decided to continue. So yeah, I stayed out late last night, and I'm gonna stay out late some more. And when I come back through that door, I don't want to hear no yakety yak no more. Then he went to bed and went to sleep. Now, there's a lot of things that could happen to a guy that's stupid enough to do that. And fortunately for him, none of those things happened. But about 3 days later, he came home, and when he got home, he realized that all her clothes were gone. And most of the furniture was gone, too. And the only thing left in the house was that big old walk-in with the shoes and stuff, and she left all of his stuff, and she was gone. So he called her job, and they wouldn't let him get through. He tried to go down to the job. They wouldn't let him come in the building. He didn't know what to do. He looked in his bank account. He had about $9,000 in the bank account. He realized that the rent was due, and that's $1,500. So he realized he was going to have to get out of there, but he lucked up, and Kermit happened to have a room at his house. So he took the room at Kermit's house. But over the course of time, he had to sell that car. He had to sell most of those suits and stuff. And the shoes was a little hard to sell. But I think he probably sold some of the shoes too. You know, he got a job driving a taxi cab. And, you know, then Kermit got married to this really beautiful lady. And now the three of them are living at the apartment together. And then Lucky's mother died. And he didn't really have no money or anything, so we put together a couple $1,000 and We got him a whole new wardrobe. We didn't get him no high heel shoes, but we got him a whole new wardrobe and stuff. And he went back to Philadelphia, and he left town looking good, spiffy, spody-ody. And that was the last time we ever saw him. Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, yet it still is news. Your mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Thank you.